get ready to get sticky.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Sticky Situations. I'm your host Rachel, which obviously you remember because I'm unforgettable. Everybody, remember to rate, review, subscribe, follow on whatever platform you're listening on. As of now, we're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. If there is a platform that you would like to listen on that we are not on, please reach out to me. I'll give you the contact in a minute and I'll see what I could do for you. Also, remember to like Sticky Situations page on Facebook, follow Sticky Situations Pod on Instagram, follow Sticky Situations Pod on TikTok. I think I'm hilarious on TikTok, and maybe TikTok is my true calling, but really reality TV is my true calling, as you guys know. But TikTok might be a close second. TikTok's actually a lot of work, but I think I'm funny, and I try to work on the TikTok, so follow on TikTok. Also, if you would like to be a guest on my podcast, please send me a DM on Instagram at StickySituationsPod or send me an email at stickysituationspod@gmail.com. If you would like to date me or any of my single guests, you can also reach out by the same means, Instagram, email, stickysituationspod, stickysituationspod@gmail.com, and I will send you the application. And yes, you can bet your bottom dollar that I do have applications. So if you want them, come and get them. So now that's all taken care of, everybody. I have an extra special guest today. Actually, all of my guests are extra special, which is like probably why you're thinking to yourself, this girl says every week that her guests are extra special. But everyone is special in their own ways. And I appreciate anyone who comes on my podcast. And I think anyone who wants to be on the podcast is a great person. So another plug for if you want to come be a guest on my podcast. But anyway, my extra special guest today is my friend Daniel. Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Okay, so Daniel, what I like to ask all my guests, just to give Sticky Situation Nation a feel for who you are, just a little snippet. Can you please tell us your age, your location, and your relationship status?
Sure. Pretty simple. I'm 28 years old. I'm from New York, and I'm single.
Okay, ladies, if you want to date Daniel, you can reach out. I'll send you the application. Okay, so Daniel and I have been discussing before recording, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just start recording and put this on the podcast. We got a lot of interesting topics to discuss today, and I'm excited for you guys to all hear. So we always love having a male guest. We know, another plug, especially for males, if you want to come be a guest on my podcast, reach out. Okay, so Daniel, I know you already told me a little bit offline, but do you want to tell my listeners what your worst dating story is?
Sure. Great way to start, I guess.
We always start with the bad.
Yeah. I guess I should preface just by saying that I've been fortunate, I guess, in my experiences not to have such a crazy, terrible dating story. I've heard some really bad stuff.
Any of you who listen to this podcast have heard bad stuff.
Yeah. Some real horror stories, some super cringeworthy, get me out of here situations. Fortunately, I have not come across that. The worst I guess I really have to offer is just this one story, or this one time I was dating in college. I dated this girl, or I went on one date with this girl, I should say. And she asked me out in the beginning. And at first, we were trying to figure out a place to go to, and then she finally decides to go to Reuben's Deli, which happened to be in Brookline at the time. It's now defunct, but it used to be
Boston, for those
near Boston in Brookline. Yes, it's no longer there anymore, but it's basically a meat deli restaurant. Kind of your typical Jewish deli place that you would practically imagine anywhere else. So when we got there, basically, she decided to order one more expensive things on the menu. It was a steak sandwich, and the conversation was just meh. It was not going great. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't good. It was just we weren't vibing at all. At one point, she goes to the bathroom, and we had these waitresses that imagine these older 58-year-old waitresses you could imagine in a that might serve you in a diner or something like that. And they approached me, and they're basically so how do you feel about the date? Do you want to go out with her again? Like, you should go out with her. And I'm just like trying to say, oh, I don't think I want to. And I'm trying to do that in the most polite way possible. And I start getting kind of uncomfortable with them. But anyway, so the girl comes back from the bathroom and finally the bill comes. And like, I noticed that like 2/3 of the bill, like, is like almost 2/3 of the bill is what she ordered, which I guess is like practically like double, I guess, what I ordered. And I was just like trying to think about like, well, she asked me out, she picked the place. Normally I would pay, but here I'm just like, I asked her like, so do you want to do this in a certain way or should I just pay for it all? And she's just like, whatever you want. And the fact that she like, I guess, ordered doubled what I want, like what I ordered, and didn't like offer to pay or even like compensate and like otherwise in any way kind of really like just turned me off completely. Yeah, so that's pretty much like the worst that I got. But like it always is a good like transition conversation to ask like other people like, what do you think like should have been expected in that situation? I mean, like, she asked me out. She picked the one in like the more expensive place. Like, was it on me to still have to pay the bill? Should we have split it? Should she have paid for it? Should I have paid for this time and then she offered to pay at another time? I never know what like the proper what should have like what would have been the proper thing to do in this case. Honestly.
I mean, okay, so from my perspective, number one, I think first we got to start with the fact that she asked you out.
Mm-hmm.
Is like there's a little bit to unpack there. How do you feel about a girl asking you out?
How do I feel about a girl asking me out? Honestly, pretty like, if you're like gonna take the, you know, have like the gutso to ask me out, which is like the less common thing that I've noticed is from what I've experienced, and I hope this isn't necessarily the case, but from what I've experienced, a lot of girls seem to ask a lot of guys for them to ask them out. So for me to be asked out is like an extraordinary event that I super respect. And so it's like actually like increases the odds of me going out with them. Even if I didn't see them in that sort of light earlier on, if they like ask me out, I feel like most of the time, unless I'm like super turned off by the idea, like either if she's like a terrible person or something like that, I'd probably more likely, I would say probably, yeah, I'd probably go for it. Cause I like, it's a super like respect, I like have so much respect for like that kind of thing, and for someone like for a girl to go out of her way and do that, even going against the societal norm, I guess.
I think that's interesting because so you guys know how I've discussed this on the podcast before. I would never ask a guy out. Like, it's just, for me, it's not that I don't have the guts, because believe me, I got a lot of guts. And I actually, the only conversation I did have with the guy who I like had feelings for, I knew what the answer was going to be, but I was at the point where I just had to say it because it was weighing on me so much. And sometimes like the question is killing you so much that you just have to ask it and get an answer no matter what that answer is.
The question being you asking them out.
I didn't ask him out. Like, I can tell you exactly how the conversation went. And mind you, like, I've talked about this guy before, and it's all water under the bridge. This was years ago. Mm-hmm. Basically, I met this guy. We became pretty decent friends. We hung out a lot. We talked a lot. He gave me a lot of mixed signals, which confused me a lot. I had a lot of people putting ideas into my head, which I think is what that initial spark was.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, like, my feelings just grew, and, like, because of those mixed signals, it was confusing.
It's
and like,
the worst. It's the worst.
Yeah. So, and you guys know this is where my rule was derived from. Actually, I didn't make up the rule. I took it from somewhere, but I resonated with it so much. If he likes you, you'll know. If he doesn't, you'll be confused. So anyway, it was getting to be the end of the summer, and I don't know, everything was starting up again. I mean, I was working full time, so I don't know what was starting up again, but it was like real life. You know, when you live in summer, it's just like, honestly, my summers are crazy busy with work and everything, but like, there's still this like light, free feeling of summer.
Mm-hmm.
And like, around September time, that starts to end. Like, the Jewish holidays were coming up, and I was like, okay, summer's over. Like, the fun is over. Like, let's see if this is real. Like, I already kind of knew, because I also, one of my other rules is, if he wants to, he will. So, but at the same time, it's like, okay, maybe he just doesn't realize, or maybe he just needs that push. So one day I had a whole elaborate plan that I was going to talk to him. And like, it was a very elaborate plan. It was like planned out for the whole weekend, and each opportunity I was like, okay, am I going to do this? So like Shabbat afternoon, he invited me to come over and hang out. But then other people were there. Cause like I went over all geared up to talk to him. Other people were there. So conversation didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Then Saturday night, he invited me and my roommate over for a movie. I'm like, okay, probably conversation.
Wait, the same weekend or a different weekend?
Yes, this was all the same weekend.
Okay.
He invited my roommate and I over for a movie, and the movie ended late. It was like pretty late, and we were walking home. I mean, he lives in my neighborhood.
Did your roommate know?
Yes.
So
she was like kind of annoying with the Saturday night part, because he offered to walk us home, and she's like, no, we're fine. I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, you should have let him walk us home.
Pretty much like really third wheeling here.
No, there were other people there too.
Oh, I
we
see.
kind of like hung out. We so we kind of with the movie. He and her were discussing the movie, and I just tagged along. And then there were other people there as well. Mm-hmm. But he offered to walk the two of us home, and she declined the offer right away. And I'm like, you're so stupid. I'm like, you should have let him walk us home. You would have gone inside. I could have talked to him, because like, for the amount that we hung out, it was more like group hangout, and then we would like hang out to the side. Okay. But I don't want to have that even if we're having a private conversation to the side.
That's not the same as being like proper one-on-one, because it's just like you have people in the back, like, whatever.
I mean,
it's not real privacy. People can hear possibly what you're saying.
Exactly. So stuff. Like, even though a lot of the times it was just the two of us talking and having our own conversation, I didn't want other people there for that conversation. So finally, Sunday morning, he texts me, and like, we used to go to Trader Joe's. We didn't live near a Trader Joe's, so we would have to take the train. And I would always like going. And he knew I liked going on Sunday morning, so occasionally he would tag along with me. Sometimes someone else would come, other times not. Like, a couple times we went just the two of us. So he texted me Sunday morning. He's like, I want to come with you to Trader Joe's. I'm like, cool. But I had already promised my roommate that she could come too. So I made a whole plan with her. I'm like, okay, when we get off the subway, you make an excuse why you need to go home right away, and I'm going to walk with him and talk to him. And so I ended up walking him home, and like, I was just like crazy nervous, and she knew that this was happening. So like, she knew I like was not okay this whole trip to Trader Joe's. Mm-hmm. And so I had a conversation with him. So I walked him home, and finally I just like said it. I was like, I had a lot of fun with you this summer. Like, do you think you can see us being more than friends? Mm-hmm. And he said no. And that's okay. But for me, that was the last time I ever took mixed signals to be signals. Right. Because I think, for me, and this is like my long roundabout answer of answering this question, like, for me, if a guy wants to, he will. And like, usually if a guy isn't asking you out, it means he's not interested. And like, maybe it could be he hasn't thought about it. But for me, it's more likely than not, at least in my head, that maybe he has thought about it. Because also in my head, in our society, like, people are getting married, like, dating is on everyone's minds. And especially like at our age, like mid to late 20s, early 30s, however old people are who are listening, everyone's getting married. In the Orthodox Jewish community, everyone's getting married, everyone's dating. Like, this podcast is about dating. Most of my conversations revolve around dating. And like, if you have a relationship with somebody of the opposite gender, you've definitely thought about dating them, and like, why or why not you might not want to. So in my mind, if a guy is interested in me, then he'll make that interest known. And even if he doesn't ask me out, I think there are ways of doing it without full out getting rejected. And like, mm-hmm. I don't think it's like a high school way of doing it. Like, it's not like, oh, tell so-and-so I like him. It's like, no, you get a third party involved.
Right.
You say, hey, would you be interested in dating this person? And it's just like to help gauge interest. And I think it also doesn't make things awkward. Like in that scenario, if I had a friend to do that and he had said no to the friend, it wouldn't have made our friendship awkward. Once that conversation happened, our friendship was over. And like, as normal as we tried to be, there was no friendship.
But why though? Like, why? Like,
because I think at that point I was in too deep, and like I didn't have any interest in just being friends with
so
him.
do you think it was on your end? Do you think more so?
I think so. I think he felt a little awkward around me for a little while, but I think he followed my lead.
I hear you.
But my lead was like, I'm so past friendship in this. Whereas like if somebody had gauged interest towards the beginning, and it would have been like, okay, is he interested? And if the answer is no, then that's fine. I just see him as a friend. I think the feelings stop. You can't really help your feelings, but like if you know in your head it's not going to be a thing, you can prevent somewhat. You don't let your mind wander. Like I don't sit around and like think I'm going to marry Zac Efron. Like yeah, I think he's extremely good looking, but like no. And like you're not comparing this guy to him, but I'm just saying if it's a realistic option or not. And I mean, people are attracted to what they're attracted to and whoever they're attracted to. But for me, I'm more attracted to real. Like, I'd rather be realistic. I'd rather spend my energy and my feelings on, like, somebody who's going to be a realistic option than somebody who doesn't want me and just, like, getting hurt. So I think because of that, I've more taken the view of, like, I don't want to ask someone out. At least, like, especially if, like, they run in my circles, like... I mean, also, like, it's very rare that I'm interested enough in a guy to ask him out. It's more like, oh, I would be interested if he asked me out. But, like, I don't have, like, feelings for him. Like, I don't know.
So, I'm, like, this brings me to, like, basically, let's put out a situation. Let's say he wasn't, like, in your, like, a guy wasn't in your circles, but you had, like, a friend that you're kind of friendly enough with, but not super friendly, who knows this guy. Yeah. And you're not like, you don't see this guy too often, maybe like once a week, I don't know, and like if you go to the park or go to school or whatever. But like there's no real opportunity for him to basically give you that that acknowledgement that he like wants to go out with you. Like basically like you have an interest in him and you're like, oh, this guy's attractive, he seems like he's friendly enough. But like he doesn't really know you that well, and like he may only see you like once every occasion, and he doesn't even like take the like there's no real opportunity to even look at you in that way. So like and that's the status quo. So obviously like you could ask the friend to see if they would be interested. But let's say like you don't know this friend like too well, like you're just kind of know them, like, you know.
Yeah.
So maybe not that comfortable asking this friend. So in that scenario, what do you think? Like, would you still go for it? How would you get, and if not, how would you get him to ask you out?
It's actually really interesting that you're saying this, because like I have encountered a guy who I was like, oh yeah, like I would be like kind of interested in him. Normally there's a friend. I believe that this Jewish community is so small that there is there is always a friend. Like, okay, I met a guy at a Shabbat meal. We vibed. I thought he was cute. So I told my friend who hosted the meal, I'm like, make it happen. Make it happen. Turns out, for other reasons, we were not compatible. And he also did not want to date me, which is fine. Guys are entitled to not be interested. But in that scenario, like, she didn't really know him, but someone else at the meal knew him. So she asked someone else at the meal. And like, so I feel like in these scenarios, there's usually somebody. But I did get put into a situation where I met someone and I'm like, they kind of piqued my interest. But honestly, I don't know. I'm just like, I feel like at this point of where we're at, I would not ask, like, I couldn't, because again, for me, I feel like if he knew me to some extent, which we had some conversations, we spoke, don't run in the same circles, we don't really have so many mutual friends. I'm sure we have a few. But I'm like, I feel like this is the type of guy, if he was interested, he would ask me out. Mm-hmm. And he didn't. So for me, I'm like, okay, that means he's not interested. And like, I know it's a lot of pressure to put on the guy. And like, again, usually I would ask a friend to be like, well, I mean, one of my good friends has decided she's my personal shotgun now. So I told her, I'm like, find this guy, set it up, make it happen. I mean, she's the one who like put ideas into my head. She's like, I think you guys are great. Like, would be great together. I'm like, okay, so find a way to make it happen. And also, like, I really do think there could be a way without me asking him out, but I don't know. But also at the same time, how much energy do I want to put into something that like might not be? And for me, it's also, I think it's an attraction thing. It's attractive to me if a guy knows that he wants to date me. Mm-hmm. And like that, I like when it makes me more interested knowing a guy is interested.
That's kind of how like creepy. That's kind of like how I guess like I kind of feel about like if a girl is interested enough to ask me out, then it's like kind of that also like raises the interest level as well. But also, what your story also reminded me of was also a kind of a similar situation while I was in college, kind of being on that hook sort of scenario.
Yeah.
So what if like the guy? So in my, I guess like I'll just tell my scenario. Why not?
Yeah. I'll just tell the story.
It's not really okay. So basically, so I was like friendly, like I guess like I didn't like ask this girl out immediately, but basically there was this like I was I think in my third year or my fourth year of college, and there was this freshman that came in, and we kind of got like sort of friendly. We were like we weren't friends, but we were friendly, and then finally like I decided to ask her out, and then we went out, and it was kind of like in retrospect it was kind of okay. But I couldn't really gauge on her interest so much. And then, like, as we were, like, trying to text each other, she wasn't really, like, being so responsive, but being responsive enough. Basically, like, not getting enough of a signal to see what the vibe was about. Mm-hmm. And then, I bought her, like, at the time I was 21 and she was 18. So, yeah, I bought her a bottle of wine.
Non-alcoholic if you're a cop.
Yeah. For her birthday. And then, like, she basically gave me this very cute card because our birthdays were in December. So I gave her the quote-unquote non-alcoholic wine for her birthday. And then she got me this very cute card. And in the card, it basically, like, was, like, free coupon for, like, you know, a meal out or something like that. But, like, as I was, like, still, like, trying to, like, as we went on a second and third date, like, it was still, like, kind of the same. And I still wasn't able to gauge what was going on. And at some point, I guess, like, a month later or so, I was basically just, like, fed up. Like, I needed to know, like, was she into me? And she wasn't. So I just, like, approached her and, like, wanted, like, basically, like, asked her if we could, like, speak privately. And I just asked her, like, look, I'm interested in you. Do you have any interest in this at all? Like, we've gone out, like, once or twice. And in the end, she actually said no.
Oh.
So it's just, like... Okay, I think she probably had, like, an interest in somebody else, but she also wanted to explore, like, going out with me as well.
Yeah.
I think that was what the situation was. But I guess, like, your scenario made me think of that, but do you think, like, if a girl is into a guy, she would, like, sort of let him, like, how would she let him know that she's into it? Because obviously you're saying from a girl's perspective, a guy would just ask the girl out. Like, that's how you would.
I gave him a lot of signals. I was very obvious.
Okay.
Basically, if he didn't know, he was the only one who didn't know. It's funny. So on this past Shabbat, I was talking to a friend of mine who is a good friend of this guy, and we were talking about that period of time, and I was like, you know what happened, right? He's like, yeah, you liked him. I was like, yeah, so you know. And like most people knew. I was pretty obvious, especially also like the week before that whole conversation, which is why I decided that weekend I needed to have the conversation. That weekend before, a group of us had like gone out. And like we just went out for like a fun night out, and like I am not the biggest drinker. I'm a lightweight. Like, I mean, not like one drink, but a couple will get me. But it's like in a fun state. So like that we pre-gamed at my apartment. I think I had like 3 drinks, and I was I was like pretty tipsy. So we were walking to the train to go out. Like this was the beginning of the night. And like the two of us are walking together because that's how it was. Like the group was walking, but it was just the two of us. And he like, I said something and he turns to me, he's like, "Are you drunk?" And I'm like, "A little bit." And like at that point in the night, he gave me his arm and like I didn't let go the rest of the night. And I was like so obvious about everything. Like it wasn't like I wasn't doing anything that crazy, but like I made him hold my hand, and he like willingly did all this. I like held onto his arm. I made him dance with me because we went to like bars with music, and like even the next day, I went and hung out with a different friend who didn't know. Like my roommates knew, a couple other friends knew. This friend didn't know, and she's like, "Yo, what's going on with you two?" And like everybody could tell. So I was like pretty obvious. Also, like, I don't know. I feel like if I'm spending one-on-one time with someone, or like if it's a moment where I'm with a group of people, but like just the two of us are talking, like I give off a vibe. And like maybe I'm not like the flirtiest or like the most outright, but for me, if I'm spending my energy and time like being one-on-one with you and like texting you a lot and like, and we would talk and like I would initiate a lot of conversations. I invited him a lot. He invited me too. But I feel like I did kind of give a signal, and like sometimes you know if someone's into you. Sometimes you don't, but like sometimes you do, and I feel like especially towards the end of it, it was very obvious. So like at that point, but also like I don't normally get to that point because I'm like, especially after that, I'm like, no, I'm not interested in being like good friends with a guy I'm into. And I'm not interested in like getting that deep with a guy who doesn't like, isn't interested in me. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know.
It's interesting, like in that, like, so I could understand like the guy's perspective in that particular scenario, like when if you're like tipsy or like whatever and you're acting drunk or whatever and you like start getting a little handsy, like he'll basically like won't take that as a signal. He'll just be like, "Oh, she's drunk," and like put it on the alcohol.
Maybe.
Which is unfortunate in some scenarios.
Like I wasn't trying to do anything crazy.
Yeah,
like,
I know. But nonetheless, like some
maybe
guys
I should have,
like,
then he would have gotten it.
Right. So, I mean, like, at the same time, like, it's also, like, kind of an odd situation to be, like, for a guy to be in. It's just, like, okay, I can't do anything because, at least, like, a decent guy would basically be like, yeah, I can't do anything because she's clearly not she's not clearly intoxicated.
Yeah, I wasn't that drunk. Like, I still could
okay.
make my own decisions. And I was still speaking normally. I was just, like, I was just looser than normal.
Right. Yeah.
And having fun.
I understand. I got you.
Yeah, so it wasn't like I was blackout and he was like carrying me around. Mm-hmm. It was like I was like a couple drinks in, I was like just having fun. So, but yeah, I don't know. But so that's my perspective on like interest and not, and like why I wouldn't ask someone out. I'm more the type to ask a friend to like see if the person's interested. And also in our communities, it's not crazy to be set up.
Yeah, like nowadays, like yeah, now at least in this community, like in this stage in life, it's much easier to get a handle on that.
Yeah, like
at least earlier in my life, I would imagine.
I don't know, like even like let's say the two of us were at shul, the synagogue at Kiddush, and a cute girl comes up and like we're talking to her, and like then you turn to me and be like, "Oh, like she's cute. I'm like kind of interested. Could you like ask?" Or like maybe like I knew her and you met her, like I would be fine if you asked me to ask her if she would be interested in you.
Right.
I feel like that's not abnormal in our communities. Like I know it sounds like kind of like middle school, like, oh, see if she likes me, but like in our communities I feel like it's not that crazy.
For me at this point, like I wouldn't want someone. I used to kind of do that, basically ask a friend, like, if she would be interested, like, do you think she'd be interested in me? At this point, I just ask them, like, do you think we would vibe? When, like, if they would say yes, I'd be like, all right, I'm just going to take care of the rest, and then I'll ask them out and then see what happens. And then I don't need to know, like...
Or, like find out if they're single or not.
Right, but yeah, obviously, I need like non-starters essentially. Are there any non-starters here? And and they said like, no, I think you guys are like awesome, like well, whatever, you should go for it. Then I'll just go for it. Like I could find out if she's interested by asking her out or not. I don't need to see if like she's like into it or
Okay,
not.
so you're braver than I am.
I I don't know. I mean, like, it's just like, I mean, like, I wouldn't do that. I'm thinking my scenario more like, basically, most of the time when I ask somebody out these days, it's like over Facebook or like, you know, something like that, or some other media, because like,
you're not like asking them in the moment.
Right. I mean, like, I could, depending on the situation, I'm not afraid to do that. I just feel like there are a lot of people that maybe like don't want to say or feel uncomfortable saying no outright, and just like need a minute to like think about it if they're not interested, or if they're not sure if they're interested.
Yeah.
So like, if you ask them over some sort of media platform, it seems to give them the opportunity to do that.
Okay.
At least like, so that's like why, I guess that's the method that I usually go for these days.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know if you agree or not. I find that girls are a little bit more open. Like, if I met a guy at a meal and I wasn't like particularly interested, but I wasn't not interested, and he asked me out, I feel like I would be more willing to go on a date than vice versa. Like, I feel like if a guy meets a girl, he knows if he's like somewhat interested in her.
Kinda. I mean, like, it really depends on.
I feel like
it depends on what the guy, what the guy is looking for, I guess. Like, there have been meals where like I thought a girl was like super attractive, and then during the meal I learned that she's just like, no. And at that point I'm just like, oh, never mind. I don't want to ask this person out. But for me, and I'll admit this much, for me, my, I guess, initial reaction for wanting to go out with a person is a combination of initial interaction, or first couple initial interactions, as well as physical attraction. So for me, I have I guess a particular type that I kind of like to go for. And anything beyond that type, like anything beyond that's outside of that, I guess that focus of those physical attributes that define the type that I go for, like I don't really care about that much. So if they like have like one or two of those attributes that I look for, as well as like if they have basically in terms of personality, what really goes far with me in terms of personality, that like really, like, even if I'm not that like attracted to them, makes me like think like, should I ask this person out? Is how like kind of open they are to just like talking with me. Like, even if I were like to like say like, how has your week been? If they're able to like basically make great conversation, show genuine interest, as well as enough to basically to ask me like what's going on, as well as to share enough about themselves, to like make good conversation, that goes a long way. Kind of reminds me of like, I don't know how many of you are aware of. I'm sure most of you are probably aware of like, you know, the Facebook group like Corona Crush and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So like throughout all of like 2020, basically, I basically partook in those like weekly like virtual speed dating stuff.
Oh yeah, I got you once on. Do you remember that?
I think so. Like very, very vaguely. I don't really.
Yeah, we weren't really friends yet. Like, okay, so Daniel and I knew each other from our old neighborhood. Like, we had a few meals together, we had some mutual friends, and I remember I got you one time on virtual speed dating. It was fun. We like caught up for 7 minutes.
Yeah, I honestly like I think I like blacked out most of those. I don't really remember.
I only remember.
Do you remember what we spoke about specifically? I honestly.
Me and you?
Yeah.
Literally no idea. I feel like we just talked about.
Gone.
We're like, oh, how's your COVID been?
Yeah, basically.
Like, oh, I'm moving to this neighborhood. Oh, I'm also moving to this neighborhood.
It's like, are you still like? Have you heard from like our mutual friends? Like, are you still living in the same spot? Did you go back home? Blah blah blah. All that like classic COVID questions.
Yeah.
But going back to like, I spoke to a lot of people. And I will say, like, I'm without exaggeration, over 100, I'd say. Like,
I also did. I would do them also, because it's like, what else am I doing? And I really forget. I remember, like, then moving to this new neighborhood and seeing people in person. I'm like, LOL, I talked to you on virtual speed dating for 7 minutes. Like, a bunch of these people, like, it's not awkward. And, like, they probably don't remember. I remember a lot of things that I try to play off not remembering.
Yeah, I kind of do the same sometimes, but I don't do it but the thing is, like, for me, it's like, I don't care. I just feel like I don't want to do it because I feel like they would get weirded out by me.
It's awkward, especially like there was this guy who I matched with, and I was actually like genuinely interested in him. I'm like, oh, I thought we like vibed. Like, as much as you think you can vibe from a 7-minute conversation.
Right.
I'm like, I thought we vibed and we matched at the end. And so he never emailed me. So I just reached out like the next day and I was like, hey, it was nice talking to you. If you want to speak further, like, here's my number. And he never contacted me. And like, I don't interact with, we don't run in the same circles at all. I've seen him from afar. I don't think I've spoken to him ever. But it's just like funny to me. But I mean, it's not a big deal. The only people I really remember are the ones who, like that, who I, like, vibed with or something like that. Oh, I do remember this one guy, though. This one guy, oh, this was great. I vibed with him. I thought he was cute. We vibed. And it was, like, his first time doing it, so we were discussing. Then, when my
so he says, you know? Like, that's a classic, like... Oh, I really don't know really what to say in these scenarios. It's like, so I'm just like, yeah. And then they say that to make themselves look like, you know, that kind of like cute, weak, like kind of like, I don't like, you know, somewhat awkward, but in a cute way kind of thing. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. So then, but like, I was entertaining. I was on my A game on that conversation. I was like, oh, he's cute, all this. And then I don't know how much time passed. But one of my really good friends got engaged. And I go to the engagement party, and the friend that I got a ride with was the photographer at the engagement party.
Right.
So she's like, we have to go early. I'm like, fine, whatever. Get me out of my apartment. It's COVID. My roommates, like, trap me. So I was like, sure. So we go there early, and 2 of his friends were there early. One was, like, working with the caterer. Like, their families were there, and they were doing the pictures. But I'm like, okay, my one friend is taking the pictures. And the other friend is having pictures taken of her with her whole family. So I was just like chilling there with this guy because the other guy worked with the catering. And it was that guy. And like, again, we vibed. We had great conversation. He actually asked me a lot of weird questions. Like, not weird as in uncomfortable. Okay. But it was like, I took it to be he was trying to like vet me for dating. Like, he asked a lot of, like, vetting questions.
Okay. Interesting how you didn't, like... You weren't put off by that, though. Were you put off by that?
No, I was into him.
Oh, okay.
No, it wasn't, like, crazy questions. He was just, like... From my...
Was it, like, for, like, a Judaic, like, vetting kind of thing? As well as,
like... He asked me
like...
about religious, about job.
Lifestyle.
It was, like, more, like, lifestyle. And, like, my job. And, like, if I'm willing to move. And we were talking about moving out of New York. And things like that. And for me, it was the way he asked. I'm like, is he like vetting me to date? Because like I'm into that. But because then my other friend, who's the photographer, finished taking the pictures. So
why didn't just ask you out on why didn't she just like make conversation and ask you out later? And that, I don't
whatever. Know. And then so after the engagement party, I texted my friend who got engaged, and I was like, yo. I was talking to this guy who's, like, good friends with your soon-to-be husband, and, like, I told her what happened. I'm like, can you, like, make it happen? Like, I had no ways of contacting him. Like, nothing. I was like, facilitate this. Make it happen. And then, like, it turns out he's not interested, or, like, he was busy, or something like that. Busy, in these scenarios, busy means dating someone else, but...
it was just not interested in is like, you know, just lying. But yeah, okay.
Exactly. So it was just weird. I'm like, this is so strange. And I'm like, because I remember after we had a very, like, that conversation, like, if I wasn't into him, it would have made me uncomfortable. But so my other friend who was taking the pictures came up after and was also talking to him, and he wasn't asking her any of those types of questions, because, like, we were also, like, still chit-chatting, but with her, it was, like, light, like, chit-chat. With me, he was, like, getting, like, deep, and I'm like, what is, like, and, like, okay, I give off a very friendly vibe, I'm very easy to talk to, but it's more like, I'm definitely more of, like, a bantery type. Like, yeah, you can come to me and have a deep discussion and, like, talk about life and all of that. But I'm just, like, I'm more of a banter, like, let's have fun, like, chat vibes.
Right. Sure.
So it was just weird. But yeah, so I remember him.
So basically, the interactions that
wonder if
get
he's
you
still
interested
single.
are.
Yo, if you know who you are and you're still single, hit me up. I'm still interested. I thought he was cute.
So, like, the interactions that basically get you interested are these super, like,
No,
grilling questions.
no. It's no.
That's the summary of what I'm getting
If
from
you're
this.
into it, it's the Dobler-Dahmer effect, which I discussed on a different episode
yeah.
from How I Met Your Mother.
Mm-hmm.
If you're into them, then it's cute. If you're not, then it's crazy.
For sure. But going back to, like, for what I was saying in terms of, like, and honestly, I'm just going to finish the thought because there really wasn't much more to it. Like, after talking with all these girls online, like, so many of them just didn't, like, want to put in the effort to even seem interested, and that, like, even, like, that kind of, like, puts me off a little bit, too, like, even from the beginning. So, like, it's, like, for me, I'm not, like, the most social person. I'm, like, a bit of an introvert. So, like, every time, like, I was, like, felt exhausted after all these sessions because I just put in a lot of social effort for it. But I honestly gotta say, like, it was so refreshing whenever I got someone who was, like, talking to me and smiling, like, at all my answers and, like, just trying to be engaging. Yeah. That, like, goes such a long way that, like, if you're, like, such an engaging person, like, even if you don't, like, you're not a 10 on my physical attraction scale and you're maybe, like, a 7 or a 6 even or whatever, that, like, sort of engaging and interest, like, pushes that up way further.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to a certain extent. I feel like with girls and guys it's different. I feel like guys are sometimes creepy and, like, super interested in you. Where as a girl, a normal girl can be engaging, and, like, yeah, a normal guy can be engaging too. But also a creepy guy can try to be really engaging as well.
It's kind of a tightrope to walk. I mean, like, honestly, it's just like you just try not to get too personal. So for me, it's just like, at least, like, for those 7 minutes, it was a lot about, like, trying to find out, like, what's going on with work, and if they said, like, oh, not really much, like if it wasn't going so well, I'd be like, oh, like, what's not going so well? Like, feel for, like, you have 5 or 6 minutes to vent. Like, feel free to do that.
I used to vent on those. Like, sometimes I would just have a really bad day,
honestly,
and I'm like, I hate
you
my
can
life.
learn a lot from person venting, and I'm, like, fortunately, like, I don't mind getting, like, the vent, like, here, like, getting a vent here and there, especially, like, on this platform where it's, like, for 6 minutes, and then after that, like, I could choose never to hear from them again. It's, like, really, if it's, like, they're constantly, like, venting to me, and I try to get a word in, and they just ignore completely, that's, like, kind of what turns me off. But, like, in this case, like, I learned a lot, like, from a person's, like, possible venting, or, like, how just asking them about their career, like, you're able to see, like, how much interest the person is in their career. And I find that someone has a lot of aspirations and life goals, especially through their career or otherwise, is also that's also gets me very interested as well. So, like, even, like, asking about something as mundane as work sometimes, like, can go a long way. And I don't think asking to that extent things about work, because it's so impersonal at times, it kind of avoids me acting off as creepy. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
Also,
has anyone asked you about, like, your extensive work to the point where you were creeped out by it?
So, honestly, like, I'm just gonna be real with you. You're not a creepy guy. Like,
oh, thanks.
Like, you're just, like, you seem like you're a normal person.
Thumbs up.
You're a normal person. Like, when I say creepy, like, these guys, you can tell, like, right away if they're, like, socially off. Like, you don't
So where do you live?
Yeah, you don't seem socially off. You just seem like a normal guy. And, like, for me, sometimes I didn't love asking, like, guys asking me about work, just because, like, I find, like, yeah, I'm good at what I do. I have a really great career. I love having my career. My job isn't my favorite part of my life, though. And, like, I don't love talking about my job just because, like, a lot of the times my job is very stressful and it's not fun. Mm-hmm. So I just don't really, like, when I log off of work, I don't really want to talk about work. Like, yeah, sometimes I'll, like, be down to talk about all the, like, the gossipy things that happened around my office, or, like, things that I found out at my client offices, or stuff like that. But especially during COVID, work was very stressful, and that's what I did for most of my time. And so when it came down to these things, I also, like, you guys know I'm an accountant, and, like, you don't know how many people I meet who literally don't believe me that I'm an accountant.
Right.
They're like, even at my job now, like, we went out for happy hour last week, and I got inducted into the fun crew at work.
Wow.
Officially.
That sounds like such a like a middle school like congrats, you're in the fun crew.
Yeah, I don't know. There's like a Slack channel. It's cool. It's cool stuff. But my like the person who's like the head of sales, like she's an officer, like she's the head of like the whole sales department. A lot of personality, because you got to have a lot of personality in sales.
Sure.
She looks at me, she's like, I still don't understand how you're an accountant. Like she's like, you have so much personality. Like,
because of the stereotype.
The stereotype. She's like, you're just like, you have personality, and it's like, it's even like funny to think, like I was talking to some of them about like personal life stuff, not even like that much of a personal life, and one of the girls was like, yeah, I'm like so honored that I'm fun because like I have 3 friends, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have like a thriving social life, but during COVID it wasn't like that, and like my job, like when I say I'm an accountant, that describes me zero. All it says about me is that I like spreadsheets and I like stability, but I don't know. That's the only reason why I don't love talking about work. But also, if a guy like asks me about my job, I'll tell him. But I'll also say like, yeah, I know I don't seem like your typical accountant, but like I'm an accountant. This is what I do. But like this is something else. Or I'll ask him. Or sometimes I'll just be straight up. If a guy's asking me a lot about my job, I'll just be like, yeah, I don't think my job really accurately depicts me as a person. So like, let's talk about this instead. Like, I just like don't really want to talk about my work. Or like, I had a stressful day. I don't really want to talk about it.
Okay, no, that's fine. It's basically when I ask the question, like, I look for how much. If they don't want to talk about something specific, that's fine. Like, I basically kind of try to gauge, like, if they want to talk about a certain aspect about work, maybe not work about it like itself, like that's fine. It's just like, oh, work's kind of stressful. I'd rather not talk about it. But like, you know, and then like you mentioned something that you rather would talk about. Like that's a kind of part of the conversation, is that like if someone asks me a question, like, you know, if I don't have a good answer for them, like either I try to like ask them a question back, try to gauge them, or I talk a little bit about myself.
Yeah.
In a way that they could be involved.
No,
which is something like a lot of people don't do for either, I don't know what reason or another. Either they don't want to talk, they just don't like talking, or they feel like they're going to come off as standoffish. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I hear that too. But we do, I want to take a break for a second.
Alrighty.
Just so we can have a word from my sponsor. But I also, when we come back from the break, I want to address, going back to your original story, the whole paying and who pays. Mm-hmm. So we're going to take a break for a second and hear from my sponsor. Here on Sticky Situations, we tend to focus on bad dating stories. But sometimes dates do go well and lead to proposals and weddings. Who would have thought? And what do all of those require, you might be asking? Well, the answer is flowers. Who doesn't want flowers from someone they've been seeing? Don't forget, flower petals and bouquets needed for proposals. And that's even before all the flowers that go into weddings. Sticky Situations is sponsored by Primrose Flower Shop. In my opinion, Primrose is the coolest flower shop around and has the best customer service to fulfill all of your floral needs. Primrose offers a range of services from your basic bouquets to subscription services where you can get flowers delivered once a week. They deliver all over the tri-state area, including Manhattan. Primrose does weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs, and other simchas. I've personally been to a wedding where Primrose did the flowers, and the work they did was beyond gorgeous. Primrose additionally offers in-store proposals, including a romantic setup with candles and music. Primrose is located at 2922 Avenue M in Brooklyn, and the phone number is 929-376-9815. You can also follow Primrose on Instagram at PrimroseNY. So, if you can't get someone out of your head, buy them some flowers from Primrose. They'll either love it or they'll find you really creepy. But regardless, the flowers will be out of this world. So, I just want to go back to your original story, Daniel, about and talk about the paying thing, because as Sticky Situation Nation knows, I think a guy should pay on a first date. But there's a caveat. I mean, again, I can't imagine a scenario where I would ask a guy out. But I do think the person asking out should be the one to plan and pay for the date. At least I think for the first like couple of dates. Like the fact that you paid, I mean, it just like it shows you're a nice guy, but like I don't think the obligation was on you.
Right. That's like
From my expert opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like originally, like I was like also I didn't mention this before, but it's like kind of like I picked a spot and she kind of like said like, okay, we go here instead. Also, and I was just like, oh, okay. For me, it's just like I was raised, I guess, being like, oh yeah, you gotta pay, like you should, like, you know, you should be the one paying, blah blah blah. So it's like like right now it's like ingrained in me. It's just like, all right, the standard is mostly for like me to pay. Also, like most of the time I am asking the person out. But at this, like, it's also very hard to like gauge what's right because I've heard so many different answers on this. Like so many. Like it really depends on the person. Some people are like, oh yeah, the guy's got to pay for me, and other people are like, well, I feel weird if the guy paid for like something that I was having or something like that. So I would at least offer. And then other people are just like, no, I want to be the one that pays or something like that. I've gotten answers like all across the board.
Yeah, I think it's like up to personal preference, but I think in a more traditional, I'm into the more traditional scenario of the guy asks me out, the guy pays, but also again, I'm not asking to be taken to like an expensive place on a first date. Like I can give you guys an example. I recently went on a couple dates with a guy, and like he came up with like really creative like it's over, but like he came up with really creative date ideas that weren't like super expensive. Like our first date, it was like he came up with this cool game for us to play, and like we were gonna get drinks first, like at Starbucks, but then the line was too long, and we're just like, should we just get water bottles somewhere instead? So we did, and then like we just walked around playing the game, which was fun, and like it was a good way of getting to know each other, but like it wasn't expensive.
Right.
So like again, I think the person asking should be the one paying, and I think they can gauge on what they can do or how much they want to spend on that activity. Like if a guy's going to take me out to a fancy restaurant, I know he's like, I'm not going to order the most expensive thing on the menu, but at the same time, like I already know he wants to pay for a fancy restaurant.
Right. Yeah, it's always like a weird scenario. Like that's why I don't really like asking, especially like if you live in New York and like, you know, going for kosher food and everything is so expensive and everything like that. It's just like, for me, it's just like I just stick to the basics for the most part. Like, you know, going out for a drink or, you know, or a coffee or tea or whatever, like, or, you know, maybe frozen yogurt or even just like a walk is basically like what I would do for the first date. So that way nobody has to feel uncomfortable with like what they have to order, and they also don't like, you know, also I don't have to break the bank myself. Like,
yeah,
you know,
on a girl who you don't know if you want to spend
exactly.
money on.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, honestly, it's like a matter of gauging. But I really like most of the time I do appreciate like when like, you know, a girl like says something about the bill, like are you sure, like I really like, or like, you know, are you appreciated, like could I pick up the next one, or could I pick up something else like in the future or something like that. So, or like, you know, I've had one girl ask me like, is this because you feel like you have to, or do you really want to, kind of thing, which I understand where that's a little bit aggressive, but I understand where it's coming from, but so I still appreciate it, kind of thing.
Sometimes I'll do the are you sure, but usually I just say thank you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, you gotta say thank you if the guy's
I always say thank you.
You gotta give some gratitude.
I always say thank you. I don't mention, like, a future thing, especially on a first date, because, like, or a second date. Like, you don't know if there's gonna be another date. I think just in my head, I know that if it's going past 2-3 dates, like, I don't mind picking up, like, the planning and paying part of the date.
Right. I always feel like, and this goes for most relationships, whether, like, you know, you're starting out or, you're in the middle of a relationship, like you're dating, or if you're married, like I feel like there's got to be some sort of balance of like giving and taking.
Yeah.
And I think like that also applies kind of towards the beginning. It's just like, okay, if I'm going to pay for this, like, are you like, and I think there should be a balance of they should be paying back, because obviously there isn't so much like you can give and take besides I guess certain monetary value, or like if someone's, I don't know, like someone does something else that's like another, I guess like a, what's the word I'm looking for? What is like one of those like those 5 like love like
the love languages?
Yeah, love languages. What acts of kindness? Acts of service or acts of kindness. Yeah, I guess like if you like do something like that would like balance it out. Maybe that's an option. I don't know, but I think like a nice balance one way or another is like I always feel like is like something good. Like I meet you halfway, kind of.
Yeah.
And like if I don't meet you halfway, like I'll like if I do 60, maybe like I want another point. You can meet me at like 60, and I'll pull back to 40 or something like that, and then like a balance.
No, I agree. And, like, I'm not saying I'll never pay on a date or never plan a date. I just like at the beginning when a guy does that, like the more traditional thing. But again, I'm not asking for, like, the fanciest, like, most expensive. Like, honestly, for me, it's that he is showing some thought into it. And, like, even if we go get ice cream, like, that's fine. Like, we can get an ice cream. You don't have to, like, buy me dinner on a first date.
Right.
And I don't know, like sometimes it gets convenient to just like if you're already dating to get dinner, or like if you're going out, like sometimes dinner is convenient depending on timing and schedules. But
yeah, especially like after work, it gets so like sometimes it gets difficult. It's just like, yeah, I'm working today. I get off at 6:30, and then it's like you try to go for drinks, and it's just like crap. I gotta try not to get tipsy after having like 1 or 2 drinks at a date. It's just like
after not eating dinner, or like I don't know, like I went on a date on Sunday and it was at an odd hour. Like, the date started at, like, 5?
I thought you were going to say, like, yeah, the date started at 5:43 on the nose.
No, it was at 5, but I had to leave my apartment by, like, 4:15-ish to get there. And we were doing an activity, and I'm like, okay, I'll eat before I go, but this is, like, lunch and not dinner. And then I got home at, like, 10:30.
Good old dinner. As some people put it.
Yeah, and I got home at 10:30, and I'm like, so I didn't have dinner, but I'm kind of hungry. Or, like, sometimes I'll meet a guy for drinks at, like, 7:30, and I'm like, so I guess I'm eating dinner at, like, 6? Or, like, sometimes we'll meet at 7. Like, you're eating dinner at a very early hour. It's either really early or really late, and I'm like, okay. And, like, my dates usually last a long time because I talk a lot.
Yeah, mine do, too. Like, every time, I talk to, like, whenever I, like, recap, I'll, like, talk to my friends or my parents about it. Yes, I talk to my parents about my dating life. Because honestly, like, my parents are, like, it's, like, part of my closest friends, honestly. So I like to talk to them.
Are you going to tell them to listen to this podcast?
I don't think they listen to podcasts very much. I don't think, I don't know. I don't think it's their thing, necessarily. But... But when I tell them, like, yeah, I went on this dating list like for like 2.5 to 3 hours or something like that. They're like, what are you doing for 2.5 to 3 hours?
That's
I'm like,
short.
I'd rather, that's short. You realize, like, I think most people say like an hour is probably like maybe 45 minutes to an hour is like the.
I think my shortest date was like an hour.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think I think my standard date time's like about 3 hours or so. Maybe two and a half to 3 hours.
I feel like mine's like 3 to 4 hours.
But when I tell them, like when they ask me that, I basically say like, yeah, I'd rather try to gauge them all at one time, and try to see if I want to pursue this in that moment, rather than like split it up across multiple days. Because like I said, like I don't like putting in that kind of social effort, like every day. I'd rather just like do it all at once, get it out of the way, and then know for sure and be done with it, or keep going with it.
Yeah, I agree. But I don't know. It's like hard to say. It's also like an in the moment thing. Like sometimes I'm like, oh shoot, it's late. Like I should go home. Or like you just get in conversation, and even no matter like how your feelings are progressing towards the person, like sometimes you get into a good conversation, and a good conversation is a good conversation.
Yeah.
Whether or not you like the person a lot or not. And I don't know. Mine just turns. I can talk. So if I go out with someone else who can talk, like the dates last a long time. Sometimes like if the guy can't keep up with me, I get tired out, and I'm like, okay, I think I want to go home.
That's understandable.
But I don't know. I have yet to go out with a guy who can out-talk me. Actually, that is a lie. I went out with this one guy. He didn't let me talk. it was a bad date, and I like don't want to talk about it. But he didn't let me talk like at all.
That's bad.
Yeah.
And
I think
did he ask you any? He didn't ask you any questions.
Barely.
Yeah.
He was like kind of socially off.
I know the type. Yeah.
No. It wasn't that he was like so full of himself. I think he was just like socially off.
Oh. Okay.
No, I feel like I'm kind of into the ego. So like if a guy just like talks a lot and has an ego, like I kind of dig it because like we can banter.
Okay.
That's like a banter type thing.
Okay.
Very rarely do I go out with a guy like that. So when I do, or like when I meet a guy like
that's
that,
risky business because like a guy could be like a real asshole, or he could just be very good at bantering. So like,
I'm kind of into the asshole, like just a little bit. Not if he's a bad person, but if he's like just like a little bit of ego,
narcissistic.
No, that's like
that's I guess why I like replace asshole with narcissism.
No, so that's on the edge of like not a good person and like could potentially be emotionally abusive. Right. I'm talking about like a guy who's a good person, but like he's got a little ego. Because like I have a little ego. So when I interact with someone else with an ego, we like banter and it's fun. For me, like that's fun. But very rare, and like he kind of matches my energy. I rarely meet guys who match my energy. And like level of ego, especially like ones who are like, I'm not like the pickiest when it comes to looks. I do have like certain looks that I like more than others. But it's very, very rare to meet someone with that kind of personality that can like match my, like can go with me like one for one. And like I'm like attracted to. Right. Because for me, attraction grows a lot as I get to know someone. Yeah. But like to be like immediately like, oh, like that's like my type. And like have that like banter. It's rare. Right. It's rare. Which like have yet to find it. I'm still single. I mean, I met guys like that. I don't think they want to date me. But if you're like that and you do want to date me, hit me up. But but yeah. Anyway, there's another topic that I just want to touch upon with Daniel while he's here, just because I think we've had this conversation before, and I just think it's an interesting conversation, and a lot of it has to do with appearance and how people judge based off of certain appearance things. I don't know if it's religious based, and like, so Daniel, I'll let you talk about your time with I don't know, this sounds like bad. It's really not.
It's really not. I mean, like, I honestly, like, I'm not ashamed of it. Basically, like, I don't know why there's so much, like, hype to it. I had long hair, like, basically for a bit of time. Like, I go through, like, hair stages, I guess. I had long hair in college, in high school, too. And then I chopped it off for college, basically kept it short, and then I got bored, and then I decided to grow out again. And then COVID hit, which made, you know, my, like, basically, in terms of the hair thing, everyone was freaking out about haircuts and everything like that. Had no effect on me at all. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. You know, just going to keep letting it grow, blah, blah, blah. But with regards to, like, how it affected my dating life.
And, like, mind you, when I met Daniel, he had a man bun.
I did. I did either, like, the man bun, or a lot of the times I did, like, the Game of Thrones-esque kind of look where I, like, did a half pony and let, like, the back let go, kind of, if that means anything. Yeah, I actually, if you can imagine that look on me, I actually did have that. And it went down to, like, my shoulders.
I'm pretty sure that's still your Facebook profile picture.
Yeah, that was just me with a regular ponytail. I've been meaning to change that. I'm going to hopefully change that real soon. But basically, how did it affect... I only, like, feel like in retrospect, I guess I learned, what more, because in the moment, there's no real way I really knew how, like, what girls, like, turned me down because of it. But from what I've heard, I guess it is one moment. Basically, when I was, like, as I was speaking about the Corona, whatever, crush virtual speed dating thing, there was one girl who's like, oh my God, do you have a man bun? And I was just like, yeah. She, without, like, any exaggeration or, like, dramatizing, she goes, why? I was like, why not? And she's just like, well, it's kind of a move. I was just like, okay, you're not into the hair. I get it. Okay. But as I talked to, I guess, more girls about it, most girls' preferences, I guess, from what I've experienced, not necessarily going to make the generalization, but from what I've experienced, most girls' preferences are like the cleaner, short-haired look. And most girls would not go out with a guy who had that hair. I feel like most would be fine if like he was like had short hair now, and maybe in the past did. Some girls not. Some girls like, oh, he had long hair at one point.
I think that's more like a religious thing, because I feel like people judge your religious level based off of that one appearance factor.
I always ask this question, like if like a person is like super religious and like they didn't want to go with someone with long hair, I was just like, what if I was a Nazir, a Nazarite, who is a person who grows out their hair for the sake of religion. Basically, it's a form of abstinence, like not really abstinence in the sexual manner, but it's just like, you know, you don't grow your hair out and you don't drink wine, and you don't go near dead bodies, essentially is the summary of it. And it's just like some form of like something you refrain from. So yeah, what if I were like to say like what if I was a Nazarite? Like how does that judgment like affect it? And they still say like in the end it's really just like, no, I prefer someone who's like kind of just has that cleaner, like, you know, that cleaner look, and is like kind of like, you know, your standard, like, you know, Jewish boy kind of looking guy.
It's funny that you bring up that like biblical type of what's the word I'm looking for? The
reference, the
biblical reference and the biblical analogy, because I feel like I get judged a lot also for my religious level, because, well, yes, I do wear pants, I do wear short sleeves, but even aside from that, I could be in my most religious like outfit and it's still a dead giveaway of how modern I am, because I have my nose pierced.
Right.
And for those of you who have not seen my face, well, watch the TikTok, because you can see my face on the TikTok, but I do have my nose pierced, and it's a tiny little stud, and a lot of people don't even notice. I think when Daniel and I first had this conversation, he's like, wait, you have your nose pierced? And a lot of people don't notice it. I had a guy once, very up close and personal with my face, did not know until like I pointed it out. He's like, wait, what? That's in your nose? And it was funny because my last relationship that I had, we did a lot of virtual dating, because our relationship started right before the Omicron surge this past winter. And so we went out on one date in person, and then we had like 3 virtual dates before we actually went out again, just because like each one of us kept having COVID exposures and weren't feeling good and all of this.
Just life.
And like within those 3 virtual dates, we had a lot of like important discussions, because it's like, okay, what else are we going to do? Like, we're going to get to know each other and like talk about like real stuff. And like at one point, hashkafa and like religious level came up, and I don't know why I got the vibe that he was just like a little more religious. We were on like pretty much the same page, but like I just had an inkling that he was, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna like be myself and straight up. And like on all of my profiles, like maybe not every single one, but I try to put a picture of myself like wearing jeans or something, just so people know.
Right.
And I had one on the way that we met, but sometimes you just don't know. So I remember we were on FaceTime or on video chat. I don't remember what platform we used, and we were talking about it, and I'm like, yeah, and I have this, and I pointed to my nose, and I put my nose all the way up to the camera, and he's like, yeah, I saw it, I know. And I was telling my friend afterwards, and she's like, you didn't put your nose up all the way to the camera, did you? And I'm like, yeah,
but
I did.
That's fine.
But like I also feel, but in biblical times, like the Torah talks about like how they
all had these different piercings and stuff like that.
It's so funny. I'm like, people are judging me, which like, yeah, I am modern, and like judge me by the fact that I wear pants, not that I have my nose pierced. But
yeah, it's such an interesting thing. It's like, it's more of a cultural thing than a religious thing at this point, because there's no like religious like sort of problem like with anything else. Like, yeah, there's no Judaic restriction or prohibition on having long hair or piercing your nose or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to like, it's a judgment based on like what kind of character that you are. And it's like, at least in my experience, like from what I thought, is like, it's a lot of the time it's like kind of a wilder, like at least for my case with the hair, it's kind of a wilder look. which a lot of girls are not necessarily into as much, whether it be just for the pure physical reason or because it's a giveaway of like, all right, this guy is not your standard guy, and I'm afraid that he's going to be like either weird or a stoner or, you know, or whatever like kind of odd like trouble that this guy could be.
And it's funny that you say that because, like, even on, like, dating apps, if I see a guy with long hair, it's, like, a subconscious thing that I just automatically swipe left.
Right.
Like, I don't even think about it. Like, I probably should think about it more because, like, in all honesty, I don't really care. Like, your body, your choice. Like...
Right. But it's, like, it's interesting. It's just, like, is it because, like, you're, like physically, it's just like, oh, it's not my thing. I don't like it. Or do you think there's something more to it? Do you think, like, it gives, like, are you taking it as, like, basically as a symbol for a little bit of what this guy's personality is like?
I think the latter.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, I do prefer, like, a more clean-cut look. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, I don't really care.
Right.
Like, again, your body, your choice. But...
Right. For me, it's just, like... As I was saying, like, I guess, like, but the thing is, like, I come from, like, I guess I come from a more traditional background, but I am, like, modern Orthodox when I come from a more traditional background. So I have more exposure with, like, you know, like, whether it be piercings or, like, not covering your hair, wearing pants, all that stuff. So, like, whenever I see, like, a stud or anything like that, it's just, like,
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in the
whatever.
community we live in now, it's not crazy, but, like, I don't know, I was talking to a friend about a guy who was potentially a little bit more religious than I was, and like she's like on a mission to like be my shadchan, and I'm like, listen, like I have this, and like I can wear all the skirts in the world and the sleeves, and like I can cover the knees and the elbows, but like I'm not taking my nose ring out, and like I mean I'm not gonna wear the skirt. I can wear the skirts out of respect, but I'm not gonna wear that forever. But it was just like it was something that came up in terms of like dating a guy who is a little bit more religious than I am, which like at the end of the day, like I'm modern Orthodox, like I consider myself religious, like I keep like 100% like Shabbat, kosher, like all of those like really important things. It's just like these appearance level things.
I wonder if there are any other guys that have there been any guys that you've spoken to, I guess, like whether it be our circles or beyond, who have or would object to like a stud or anything like that?
Nobody said it to me, but also at the same time, like I'm not dating guys from these circles and asking. So I would need a guy who's like a little bit more to the right of me to ask. But at the same time, like what's he gonna be more bothered by? The fact that I'm wearing pants? Or the fact that I have a stud in my nose. Right.
It'd be an interesting research project.
But, like, a guy who doesn't care that I wear pants, like, would he care that I have a stud in my nose? I definitely have, like, talked to guys who don't like it.
Interesting.
But I think that's
honestly
personal preference.
Right. But the thing is, like, I can't really speak to that much at all. Because, honestly, like, to me, it's just, like, I am totally, like, apathetic to it. Yeah. Like, it's just like...
Also, like, mine is barely noticeable, and I happen to look really good in it. Like, it looks good on me. And I, like, wear it well, because it's just a teeny little stud.
Right.
So, and I've been told I have a good nose for it, and I personally really like it. But, I don't know, it's something that comes up, and it's interesting. So, I thought that was an interesting topic.
Yeah, for sure.
But, anyway, Daniel, as we approach the end of the episode... I always ask my guests to give my listeners, Sticky Situation Nation, some dating advice. So do you have a piece of dating advice for Sticky Situation Nation?
So a little bit more about myself, as I am an overthinker. I always tend to think I always double, triple, quadruple think everything, every step along the way. How should I, if I'm going to ask this person out, how should I do it? How should I word it? Should I wear this? Should I say this? Should I talk more about everything? All that stuff. I overthink everything. And there's a lot of the times I have to basically tell myself, hey, you gotta take a step back, kind of. But not necessarily to the point where you don't go in without thinking, but rather just take one thought and then go. So I guess the the catchphrase that, or
Wait,
like
not your tagline, your advice.
my advice.
Yeah, they can be related.
Oh, they could be related. Well, I'm always like, so I guess I'll just like, this will be, I guess, the explanation of what I was going for. So I guess it's just like take one thought and like, I guess, go for it. Like, don't overthink it. Don't like hesitate too much, and don't go in without thinking. And like, you know, if there's a shot, like whatever, like it might be, like you feel like there's a way, you should still go for it. Because otherwise, like you could like say like, no, I don't think I want to, and then like, you know, you learn later that, oh, maybe I should have. Because like, you know, you missed an opportunity because you have hesitated or something like that.
You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Yeah. Should I go on with the tagline now? Or?
Yeah, you could say your I like that piece of advice.
Okay.
Shoot your shot. I mean, I don't know. I have my own hesitations with shooting my own shot.
Yeah, I always hesitate a lot too, depending on like, I still like, don't get me wrong, it's still something that I'm working on too. I still hesitate a lot on myself. It's still something I struggle with myself, because, you know, if it was something that like, you know, I didn't struggle with, it wouldn't resonate with me as much, and I wouldn't be sharing it.
I try to be bold though. I've like taken like more of a bold approach. It's just like, except for when it comes to asking guys out. I will tell a friend to make it happen,
right.
But I will not ask a guy out. At least like not at this point in my life.
Right. A lot of times if I like see someone who like, or I think like, if I see someone who I think is like super attractive, or if I feel like is someone who's like, I'm like getting a lot, like, you know, even for a short amount of time, like is like super chemistry with, if there's like some reason like in the back, unless it's a non-starter, if there's some reason in your back of your head that's just telling you like, maybe you shouldn't, you should just be like, no, you know what? Go for it anyway. Unless, like I said, unless it's like a real non-starter, or it's like something like, you know, for sure, you should just like go for it anyway. Because otherwise, like, you know, you might learn later that whatever that reason was, it might not have been true, or you know, you were, you know, overthinking it, or whatever like it is. It might not necessarily have been foundable, I guess.
I think it's a good piece of advice.
Yeah.
And I know you're dying to tell everyone what your tagline is.
I guess so. Now that I've like, you know, I've jumped the gun on that a little bit, so okay. I feel like I should just like get it out.
Everyone's very excited about the tagline, so like that's fine with me.
Taglines, yeah. So I guess like what I came up with is, I guess, look both ways before you cross, but don't stop in the bike lane, because otherwise you will get hit.
I've almost been hit by multiple modes of transportation in the bike lane.
I've actually never been hit. I've never been like even grazed by a biker or anything.
Hit, but I've been almost hit by a bike, by an electric scooter, an electric wheelchair, the street cleaner one morning. Like, I just have a whole list of things that I've been almost hit by in the bike lane. As I was crossing the street.
Fortunately, the only thing that really, I guess, while I've been in New York, the only thing that really hit me was a pigeon. Actually,
ew.
You would think that they would be at least smart enough, like they would be smart enough to avoid you as they're flying.
Ew.
This one did not. Did I get tested for diseases? No, because I was wearing, this was like, I guess in winter I was still wearing my coat, and I was just like, oh, damn it. See, like that, like, you know, that just proves that sometimes something's just going to hit you even though you're on the sidewalk. And, you know, you just got to be prepared for that. But when you are,
always
taking
prepared.
a leap, always be prepared.
A pigeon might hit you.
A pigeon might be dumb enough to fly into you.
Even if you avoid the cars and the bikes, a pigeon still might hit you.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of true, but, you still got to keep on walking, though.
You never know what life's going to bring, so just keep walking.
Yeah, you got to keep on walking, too. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I like that. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This has been great.
It's been blessed.
I hope our discussion helped some of you guys get some perspective.
I hope so.
I always love a male perspective. But yeah, so thank you so much.
Of course, my pleasure.
And Sticky Situation Nation, it's been real. You'll catch me next time. So bye, everybody.
Bye.